my name is Matt Stacconi. I'm here to talk about what's new with AutoCAD MEP and Revit MEP 2017. A couple of big things about what's new with both of these products this year. Let's go ahead and advance this here. There we go. So start off with what's new with AutoCAD MEP. The improvements this year are quite a bit cosmetic, I would say, but there are, along with the improvements in AutoCAD architecture, we got some platform improvements, mostly with editing live sections and refreshing those sections on open. So you can see here, if I take the list of new features, we have three new features for editing live sections, some being able to modify the section line without having to regenerate or redo the whole thing from scratch, I should say. We can regenerate these sections on open and so on and so forth. Then we have a bunch of refinement, I would say, improvements in the style browser, doing things like the way that Autodesk is now classified a lot of the information in the style browser. It makes it easier to see everything and use the style browser basically as sort of a one-stop shop for everything. We have a couple of new commands with electrical. We have a circuit assign and panel assign command, and we also have parallel routing improvements for pipe and conduit. So with that, let me go ahead and look at what's new with editing live sections. The big thing with this year is that we have the ability to easily adjust a design in a section or elevation view, not just a plan. It's more streamlined. It removes many of the previous manual steps that you had to go through. You basically can effortlessly modify objects in the current drawing or in any level or XREF. Now, what's happening with this too is that the edit reference in place tool now runs transparently, so you can select multiple objects that are in the same XREF for editing. It also supports nested XREFs and blocks as well. So it's going to enable you to easily edit objects in a section for improved documentation. We also have, with a live section, we have the ability to refresh the section on open, automatically update them instead of having to manually regenerate them at every time. We can also modify this section defining line without having to recreate it. So we can easily, just like you can with a polyline, you can right-click on the middle segment or any segment in a live section and add a vertex, add a parallel jog, and once you regenerate the section, those things are automatically taken care of. We have, like I said, with the style browser, we have an expanded object list. Actually, let me back out for a second. I'm sorry. Let me go back into, here we go. This is what I wanted to do. Let's go back into AutoCAD MEP and actually look at a little bit of this stuff. If I go here and let's go ahead and make a vertical section, and I'll say, you know, from here to here, and I'll go, see, that's good, and I'll go back to here, maybe go back to here, generate the section. Oops, I misclicked out here like this. And I can go ahead and modify this to grab, say, this back wall. Click on this and essentially just go ahead and regenerate it. But what's nice about this is now I can go ahead, if I mouse over that middle section right there, I can either add a vertex, offset it, add a parallel jog. So if I wanted to come in here, something like this, I could do that, and then my section here, I could regenerate the live section, and you can see where the live section is automatically updating. Also, with this section, with this live section, if I come over here to the right-hand side, you'll see that this refresh on open option is now available. I can go ahead and hit yes, and every time I reopen this file, the live section would automatically regenerate. So if I have, if this is a file where I am you know, XREFing in a bunch of different things, I can see all that happening right when I reopen the section and not have to worry about that. As well as when I click on this and I go ahead and edit the live section. If I go into my edit live section mode here, you can see where I have my architectural background here, And what I can do, if I'd like to, I can go ahead and, oops, save those changes. Sorry. There we go. Let's try to save the changes again. Didn't think I'd make any changes, but okay. Okay, this isn't playing with me really well today. Let me go ahead and discard these changes. Get back to here. Here we go. And let me get out of editing the live section. Just make sure that that's okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's something going on with that. Not really sure what. But anyway, we can go ahead and our live sections are much more agile. And this feature is basically a holdover from AutoCAD Architecture 2017 as well. That feature is new in that release too. Like I said, the style browser got a little bit of a makeover here. So we have our expanded objects list is each node has been subdivided instead of it kind of being all under the MEP objects. So now we have HVAC objects, piping objects, plumbing objects, and so on. So back in AutoCAD MEP, we can see we have our HVAC objects, piping. So it's basically just a little bit of a cleaning of the house, if you will, in terms of how this is working, which is fine. Oops. There we go. We have also, with just the way that it was organized, we also have our system definitions are now unified, and they apply to all selected objects for cable tray, conduit, other electrical objects, duct, pipe, plumbing, and schematic objects as well. So essentially this enhanced style browser is always going to be used no matter what kind of type you're working with, no matter what MEP system you're dealing with, whatever. The style browser is essentially your one-stop shop for basically everything you need to deal with in terms of MEP elements. We also have routing preferences improvements. Again, taken care of through the style browser. We can, you'll see improvements for or added routing improvements for ductwork, pipe, and conduit. We have reducing, basically this, what's nice about this is now you don't have to load up your MEP templates with a lot of these routing improvements. They're all basically held outside of the file so that they're easy to work with. We have that single reference, and that's held in a single routing preferences content drawing that's referenced in with the MEP elements. So all of that stuff is held outside of the live, current drawing. And then you can also use the binoculars button to display those preferences. We have additional objects. We now support panels, devices, schematic symbols, and plumbing fittings all within the style browser. Makes it quite easy to, again, use that for everything you'll need. You can also add a directory with the style browser. You can add multiple drawings all at one time, including subfolders, access to all the styles embedded in those, and include multiple drawings instead of individual drawings. Little minor improvements here, drop-down lists for an auto-scrolling of objects. It includes, again, with the big push from Autodesk for including A360 in your daily workflow, either in saving settings or using it to save views and transfer files back and forth. We can use A360 for sharing styles, so you have basically that global sharing of styles with extended project teams using A360 as a transport medium. And then we can also close the system browser with the system browser closed command, and we can also use the ribbon as well. Okay. Electrically, we have two new commands, circuit assign and panel assign. You can assign the circuits using the command line, assign circuits to one or more selected devices, and change the panel for selected devices as well. And then we have parallel routing improvements, basically being able to draw parallel piping very easily. They'll follow the same routing preferences, and it makes the connections automatically as well. So we just pop back into the MEP. So I have, say, a pipe right here, and if I want to, first thing I'll probably do is draw some parallel pipes to this, offset, say, I don't know, 8 inches or so. So I'll go ahead and hit the copy tool, copy command, and I'll just copy this down, say 8 inches, say 16, 24, and I'll go ahead and hit enter like that. So now I have 4 parallel pipes. Then what I'll do is in the Home tab under pipe, you'll see parallel pipes right here. Select the baseline objects. I'll select this this pipe right here, and then I'll select my parallel pipes. And now what I can do is from the closest endpoint to where I first selected the baseline pipe, I can now start drawing parallel pipes very easily. Okay. Oops. Let's get back to where we were. Sorry, my PowerPoint skills are lacking. Okay, so that's AutoCAD MEP. Like I said, most of the commands or most of the new features are pretty cosmetic, mostly with the style browser. Some nice new functionality in terms of parallel piping and live sectioning. All right, for MEP, the big thing about MEP is its inclusion of fabrication parts. The other thing that MEP does is now it essentially optimizes the use of background processing for color fills. So for example, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and connect in these air terminals to these mains, basically branching these off, and you'll see that the color fills based upon the CFM going through those particular segments of ducts are changing automatically. So it's giving you basically that real-time view of the airflow through the ductwork. So now we have the ability to insert and place and insert fabrication parts. As long with this, now this was a new feature back in 2016 R2, and if you could download the extensions for this and be able to place fabrication parts. Essentially, the idea behind fabrication parts is that you can now design or now you can model in Revit MEP using fabrication technologies. The data is exactly the same as it is in the Fabrication CAD MEP product. So what's nice about this is that while you're working in the fabrication side in Revit MEP, you don't have to go out to AutoCAD to do your fabrication drawings anymore. You can stay in Revit because you're probably going to get MEP models from the MEP engineers as you go into detailing and really getting into the nitty-gritty of how these MEP parts are going to be fabricated. So instead of going out to AutoCAD to do all this stuff or having to do some sort of transformation between Revit and AutoCAD, you can, or having to redo it completely in an AutoCAD CAD MEP kind of product, you can do all of this right in Revit MEP now. And so Autodesk's focus is to use Revit MEP or the Revit platform as that cradle to grave kind of working environment. So no longer do the fabrication folks have to be in AutoCAD land where everybody else is playing in Revit. So with this, we've gotten better tools for working with fabrication parts. We have the ability to insert a part or break a part, and for valves, dampers, tees, things like that. We have enhanced rotation tools, which I'll show you in a little bit. We have the ability to place a fitting as a tap using squared around junctions, or squared arounds and junctions and things like that. From a circuiting standpoint, from an electrical standpoint, we have better user control. We have flexibility for outside of the U.S. needs as well. We now have the ability to have distribution systems be automatically assigned instead of having to go through the manual process of assigning distribution systems, which is going to eliminate a lot of the errors you have when you're connecting pieces and parts together. So for the fabrication side, like I said, we have the ability to work with laying out fabrication parts. We can convert Revit MEP engineering designs in terms of layouts and things like that right into fabrication parts, and we also have now support for supports, basically hangers for piping and ductwork. So now for layout, we have the ability to use, in 2017, we now have the ability to use common Revit commands for things like editing fabrication parts. If you're used to working with Revit MEP to laying out regular ductwork, you know you can use things like trim and extend and those kinds of tools to connect ductwork together and connect piping together fairly easily. It automatically assigns, you know, it'll automatically do rises and drops and things like that. Well, those kinds of features now extend over to the fabrication side, so we can go ahead and use more or less common tools for more complex fabrication layouts. We also have a new tool for quick connecting and stretching fittings from one endpoint to another. It's making your layouts much easier, much faster. From a documentation standpoint, we can now have the ability to document the elevations, the abbreviations, the rises and drops, and as well as we have now hidden line control in fabrication parts. So you can now see the hidden lines as your pipes and ducts go over top of each other. We can now swap out fittings very easily and pitch the elements as well. So let me go back into Revit really quickly. Let me find Revit for one thing. Here we go. All right. So let me just give you an idea of how this is working. So this is a brand new project using the systems default template, just so I know how I have routing preferences and things like that set up. So let me go ahead and lay out a pretty quick duct system here. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out a duct, and this is going to be at, maybe I'll put this at 8 feet for right now just so I have it, and I'll make this, say, 24 inches wide, and I'll just go ahead and lay out, say, a layout here, and actually let me do this over again. Let me go back to duct to make sure that I picked the right one this time. Let me do mitered elbows and T's, or mitered elbows and taps rather. So I'll go ahead and lay out this going like this way, say up like this, and say over like this. And as you know, you can go ahead and take this guy, and I'll let's go ahead and place some air terminals for one thing. And I'll place these at, just place these a little lower. Some distance here, like this, maybe one like this, and another one like this. Scooch this one over a little bit, like that. Okay, so what I have is I have my layout running like this. It's feeding these 6 air terminals. What I'll probably end up doing is breaking it something like here so that I can take this and make this, instead of 24, maybe I'll make this 18. Like this. Oops, let's take this and make this 18 as well. There we go. And maybe I'll break this as well. And I'll make this, say, 12 inches. Like that. And then I can go ahead and select this guy and connect it into here, like that, and take this and connect it into there. Oops. It's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a very, very quick layout of ductwork and air terminals. And if I wanted to, I could put a VAV box in here, but it's not really necessary. Okay, so now that I have this, what fabrication parts allow me to do is basically turn this into a fabrication model. Okay, if I come over here into systems, we have this now fabrication part button here, and if you'll see this on the right hand side, if I hit fabrication parts, this is basically a toggle that turns on our fabrication parts palette over here. Now there's nothing in it because I don't have any anything configuration. I don't have any fabrication configurations in my model yet. And the way that this works is this borrows everything from the CAD MEP product. And so if I come over down here to settings, you'll see that I have several fabrication configurations ready to go. Now, if I have fabrication CAD MEP installed on my system, so I have these additional configurations that come with the product. And you can download additional configurations too from the web, okay? If you just have Revit MEP installed or just have Revit installed and just the building design suite, it's gonna come with the Revit MEP Imperial and Metric Content version 2.0. So if I just go ahead and use Imperial Content version 2.0, what I get down here are my services that are available to me. So you can see I have several services for ductwork, electrical, piping, and so on and so forth. So what I can do here is now I need to load these services into the project so that I can use them. So I'm going to go ahead and click on, say, ductwork here, and I'll say, maybe piping as well, and I'll go ahead and add those in. So when I go ahead and add these services in, I'll go ahead and hit OK. It's going to populate my fabrication parts palette with the parts that I have available to me. So if I look at ductwork, 2-inch water gauge, I now have these different groups. So I have rectangular, I have round, GRDs, I have accessories, hangers, okay, several different hangers here, oval ductwork, and fire dampers. So this comes with this particular fabrication configuration, this particular service in that fabrication configuration. So what I can do now is, and the way that this works, the way that fabrication parts work in a nutshell is actually really quite intuitive and very easy. So if I just let me leave this alone for a second here, but let me go over here and just click on this straight segment right here. And as I mouse into this, you can see where I'm placing this segment, and right now it's at, right now it's at level 0, but that's okay. I don't have to worry about it for right now. I can go ahead and change that later. But you can see here right now it says a primary width and a primary depth of 12 and 24. If I do 12 by 24, you can see as I scroll in here that this is using basically a slip and drive fabricated duct part. Okay, you can see the parallel lines at the end basically tells you that it's slip and drive. If I go ahead and change this to a larger duct, say 24 inches by 24 inches, you'll see that now I have flanges at the end, and this is TDC ductwork. So it automatically knows, based upon the built-in databases that come with this configuration, that it knows that some parts are going to be TDC, some parts are going to be slip and drive, and there is the ability to actually modify the connections at each end independently. So if I go ahead here and I just start placing this, what I have here is the ability to place the piece of duct right here, and you see where it's going to give me these little connector arrows, and I can go ahead and just basically place this and place this and place this, and I have my open warnings, my open systems warnings coming up here. That's why those little exclamation points are there. I'll go ahead and add a square elbow, and as I mouse over this, you see how it's going to snap right to that. That's what this smart snapping is all about. If I take the smart snapping off, then I have to really pretty much get right on top of it, okay? But if I turn smart snapping on, it makes it very easy to go ahead and place these things very quickly. And I can use my space bar to tab around, and that rotates the part as it's going around that particular piece of ductwork. So now, if you'll notice too that when I mouse over this, you'll see that it turns, there's a little dot right in the middle that has, it's either green or it's blue, okay? And what that means is whether the piece is facing you or going away from you. And you can see that down here in the settings. If I bring the settings back up under connection indicators, we have color codes to tell you whether that fitting or that piece is going away from you, which is green, or going towards you, which is blue in this particular case. So if I go ahead and just place this square elbow, let's go ahead and put that there. Go ahead and hit this straight piece right here, straight piece right here. Go ahead and put this square elbow in like this, so on and so forth. So what's happening here is that it's placing these parts automatically. And if I look at this part right here, you can see over here on the left-hand side, the length is 4 feet 8 1/4. Now that 56 1/4 inch length is the standard length for TDC ductwork, okay? But if I go ahead and put in another piece here that's maybe 12 inches, let's see, 24 by 12. Now it's back to slip and drive, and if I go ahead and put this in, you'll see that this is now 4'11", which is the standard as defined in the database for the standard length for slip and drive ductwork as well. And as I go ahead and connect these, it knows what kind of duct to add. Okay, so you can see that basically from that standpoint, this is actually fairly simple to use. Okay. Go ahead and erase those. Now with this ductwork here, what I want to do is I want to convert this. Say if I'm an MEP fabricator and I get a Revit model from the engineer. I mean, the first thing I'm going to want to do is to start turning this into fabrication parts. Okay, so once I have my configuration loaded up here, all I really have to do is just hover over this segment and hit tab a couple times to grab everything. And I can come up here and click on the Design to Fabrication button. And what that does is basically starts converting it using whatever the service that I want. Now I'm going to use this ductwork +2 WG system, and it's going to go ahead and crank through there, and it's going to go ahead and make this. Okay. Now it went ahead and put in radius elbows here, but I can go ahead and change these out to being square elbows pretty easily. And you'll notice too that it also put in the correct boots at these places right here. Now obviously these are probably going to need to be, you know, probably volume dampers at some point if I'm not driving it from a VAV box or whatever. But it basically put in all that stuff. Now what I have here is I have lengths here that are obviously longer than the length that we need for this particular kind of ductwork. This is longer than 5'11", obviously, but if I go ahead and hit optimize lengths, you'll see now it puts in the 4'11" duct, and then where it has to put a smaller one in, it'll put the smaller one in there. So I can go ahead and select basically these segments here, go ahead and hit optimize lengths, and it does this. Okay, and I can do the same thing for these branches as well. Okay, makes that fairly simple. Now what I can do here is if I go ahead and take this this guy right here and start moving this up and down, you can see where it's being constrained along this load right here. And let me go ahead and do that, probably a little bit more than I wanted to. Go ahead and hit the move tool. It'll do this. But if I go ahead and put in, you know, let me put in a simple line over here. And the other thing I can do too is I can rotate around as I'm placing this using my spacebar. And there is a help tooltip that can show up here that'll tell you basically what the controls are at your disposal. So if I hit a space, I rotate it. If I hit the up arrow, I can toggle the connector from being the one side or the other. Okay, and HT is the shortcut for hiding that. So if I go ahead and just place this and place a square elbow going this way, a couple more pieces like this. When I go ahead and click on this and move it, you can see that I'm constrained to this direction like this. Okay, but if I hold the shift key down, I'm holding the shift key down right now, you can see where the movement is now allowing me to go left to right as well as up and down. So I can go ahead and stretch out that duct part to over here, and if I wanted to, I can go ahead and again edit that. Now when you're laying out fabrication parts, one of the things is that you have to understand that it is markedly different from laying out regular ductwork in Revit, because you saw before as I went through this, I was able to basically break this ductwork right here, and it automatically put this transition in here and here and here. Fab MEP or the fabrication parts facility doesn't really do that. If I go ahead and look at this part right here, okay, it's driven by the design basically. So basically, you know, I should be, you know, taking an MEP duct system and then converting it into parts. A couple of things about parts in general. The first thing is they don't play with systems. So right now, if I look at this this piece of ductwork right here, there's nothing over here telling me that this is part of a supply duct or a return duct or whatever. At this point, it really doesn't matter for a fabrication, from the fabrication standpoint. So it doesn't really have to worry about that. It doesn't have to worry about that kind of additional, you know, bit. What it's really concerned about is, what kind of duct is it, what size is it, and so on and so forth. The bits and pieces you need for fabrication. So if I look at this this piece of duct right here, if I go over here to edit part, you'll see that a lot of this stuff is locked out. If I go to edit part, this is how you can edit this particular piece. And the length right now is set to auto. The width and the depth are locked out, basically because this is already connected to here. So if I take this point and move it off to here, move this out to here and say edit part again. Now what I can do is change it. So let me change this to, say, an 18-inch wide part by, say, 10 inches deep. Okay, so basically what I need to do is I need to connect these two together. Okay, so to connect them together, what I have are tools. Let me go ahead and I'll make sure that this is aligned like that. There we go. And like I said, the align tools now work in fabrication parts, so I can use AL, or I can click on this and go to my align tool, click on that, that's good there. If I go ahead and click on this and use the create similar and create another piece down here, let's make this 18 by, this should be 8. I got the wrong width and the depth mixed up. So this is 18 by 10, and this is 18 by 10. Is that correct? Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay, 18 by 10. All right. So what I can do now is because I have these two pieces right here, I can use normal Revit tools for this. So if I want to trim and extend these to a corner and put a square elbow at the end, all I have to do is trim, extend, click, click, and it does what it needs to do. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. This is actually, now that I look at this, yeah, it's 24 inches deep, not 24 inches wide. Okay, that's okay. We'll roll with it. Let me get rid of these. Let me take this and make this, instead of 10, let's make this, or 18, let's make this, say, 8 inches by 8 inches. Make it easy. Okay. All right, so what I can do here is now to connect these two together, I can do a couple things. First of all, I can go ahead and get a transition. Okay, just use a pretty easy transition from here to here, and I can go ahead and click on that and then bring this in, and should be able to snap to it. Let's try it again. Actually, what I can do is just create that from there. There we go. So I could do that. The other thing I could do is, if I don't have this, and I have this sort of out in the way over here, is I can use the route and fill tool. And what the route and fill tool basically does is you pick the elements that you want to connect together, and it figures out what the routing should be using the rules that it has built in. So if I use route and fill, I can go ahead and you see that there's a green line emanating from the point where it was starting, because I had this thing selected. I have smart snapping enabled here in the ribbon, okay, and I can go ahead and just mouse over to it finds the available connector to go to, and it will go ahead and put this in. Now there's our solutions, depending on the parts and how these things are configured. There are solutions to this, and you can see over here on the right hand side in my fabrication duct, as I mouse over these are the two pieces, okay, that are being inserted here. And if I had more than one routing solution, you could see it would show up here. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that for right now. And that allows me to go ahead and do this. Now the other thing about fabrication parts in general is that you can connect them to regular families and system families as well. So in other words, I have this hardwired fabricated ductwork here going to this air terminal. Okay, so it supports connecting to regular MEP things. So if I want to make this flex duct, for example, though, what I can do with this is, let me go ahead and just erase this, and let me take this this piece right here, and let's make this say just 2 feet coming off of that tap like this. So what I can always do is I can still go into systems and go to flex duct and go ahead and put in my flex duct connection there, and let's go to a 3D view. And so I have this. Now this piece that was inserted here is just a regular normal rectangular round transition family that you would see everywhere. It's not a fabricated part. But what I could do is, you can see now I also don't have fabrication parts that I can just swap out. What I can do is just temporarily delete it, I should say, and then come over here and look for a squared around transition. So I'll go ahead and put this in, and I can go ahead and put this in right in 3D. We go ahead and give a say a consistent colors view, fine level of detail, and then I can take this flex duct and just pull it back and connect it right to that, right to there. Okay. Still getting a disconnect symbol. Let me just back out to here a little bit. And what I can do is, while I have this selected, I can come over here and I can change the secondary diameter. Like this is a 12-inch duct right here, but if I make this 10, let's make that 10, and we'll take this and we'll make this 10 inches for the secondary diameter, so it shrinks that down. The length is 1 foot, but I can make this something else like 8 inches very easily, and just go ahead and pull that back there. And then I can go ahead and easily just go ahead and connect that in, and everything is hunky-dory, no disconnect symbols or whatever. You'll see too that fabrication parts look inherently different as well. With regular ductwork, ductwork looks like rectangular ductwork looks like, just like a solid stick. With this, now I have the ability to put in my. You see, it's essentially hollow, which is really nice. It looks more like it's supposed to. Let me add an end piece right there. You'll notice too that if I delete this, let me go ahead and add in a TDC end cap right there. I can do that as well. And when I look at this part right here, under connectors, what should happen is actually it should give me a warning that I've added a TDC connector to the end of a slip and drive duct. But what I can do with this is, if I select on the duct, let me go ahead and get rid of this guy right now. I can go ahead and look at the part again, edit this part, and go to connectors, and you'll see that the end part right here, I can modify this, and I'll pull this down and make this, say, a TDC connection like that. So there's my TDC connection there. Add in my TDC endpoint. Oh, that's weird. Oh, I have the wrong one selected, I think. All right, let me pull this back and do that again. Okay. So all in all, basically fabrication parts allow us to do a lot of really, really interesting, nice things when it comes to turning that MEP design intent model over into a true fabrication model. And we can go ahead and use this, use Revit as our platform for documentation and further work. The other thing, like I said, is showing is in this video is basically how we can go ahead and add in things pretty easily. Like I'm adding a valve in line right to this piece of piping right here. It also adds, and by using the controls for the angles, I can set the angle for these for the valve itself, and with different options, 90s, 45s, and so on. Makes it quite easy. And if it needs to put in additional flanges and things like that around the part, it will do so. So you can see where it put in these flanges automatically. It knows the dependencies based upon the databases that it needs for fabrication. And it's fairly easy to change, different things. So let me just back out to here, and oops, sorry. Okay, so like I said before, we have the ability to convert from design to fabrication fairly easily, adjusting for standard lengths and working with the normal tools that we have in Revit. We also have hangers, and what's great about hangers is that they will automatically seek out structure for them to hang from. Okay, so the hangers that we have support things like just typical trapezes. The hangers can also support from other hangers as well. So when a hanger is looking for that host to hang from, it can either find a piece of structure either in the model that you're in or a linked model. So that's really cool because, you know, the ability to work with linked models is going to be really important because your structural is 99.9% always going to be in a separate model. The hangers will automatically find that structure and be able to hang from it. It'll automatically be able to adjust the rod position based upon just, you know, grip editing things. We can go ahead and support cantilevered supports and hangers as well. So let me pop back into Revit. You find Revit here, and let me get out of this file. And I'll go to this one. I thought I had it open. I apologize. Okay, so in this particular file, we have, let's see, look at our configuration here. We're using this Imperial Content version 3.04, and I have this supply air service here. If I want to add more services, what I have to do is hit the reload configuration. And this is telling me basically that the service that was in the model is using 3.03. The source, the configuration I have is 3.04, what I want to do. And I can either keep the configuration in the model or reload and overwrite the 3.03. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. I don't think there's anything major between them that's going to be a problem. And in this one, this service is aligned a little bit differently, where we have actual services, MEP services listed here instead of being grouped by pipe or duct type, as we saw in the other one. So I can go ahead and add in, say, a return air service, as well as hydronic, say, chilled water return and supply, things like that. So I can go ahead and add these in fairly simply. So in the case of this, let me go back to this 3D view here to show what's going on. And here's a situation where I have a simple air handler and I have a hole through the floor here. And what I need to do is basically add some ductwork below it, coming out of the bottom. You see where I have this set up here. I'm going to go ahead and do myself a favor. I'm going to hide my levels category real quick. So for this, I have under my supply air, under my groups, I have rectangular. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a straight segment here. Now you can see as I mouse over this connector, it's automatically going to rotate it and size it correctly for this. And this little green line, or this little red line here, orange line, is basically just sort of a layout, you know, sketched in. Come down this way, go over this way, go down this way, go over this way, kind of thing. So I'll go ahead and just put in the parts that I need. So go ahead and put in my elbow, go over to the straight segment here, do another square bend down, like that. Straight segment down like this, and let me bring this up to about here. Do another bend this way, kind of like this. And like I said before, I can go ahead and align this if I wanted to be, you know, quite exact with this layout. I can go ahead and very easily do that as well. So now if I want to add hangers for this, you'll see that the structure I have available to me is my floor. So let me come down here to hangers, and I have my rectangular hanger right here. And you can see that automatically it's going to go ahead and put that hanger in. It's going to associate it to the duct, and it's going to find the nearest structure, like this. And what happens with this is if I move my duct outside of this, if I pull this back to here, oops, not the line, the duct. Let me pull this back to here. I'm going to get an error message. The hanger is out of its host and will be disconnected. Okay. So what I can do is, if that's going to be a problem, I can go ahead and move this in, and then move this in as I need to, so that it still is supporting things. Okay. So the inclusion of hangers is obviously a huge new thing that's going to be well received. If I look at this hanger right here, for example, what I can do is basically unlock this. Should be able to unlock it. Yeah, I should be able to. It did it a little bit. I should have been able to. All right, let's back up a little bit. There we go. Oh, I know what's happening. Dumb. Sorry. There we go. So it's easy enough to go ahead and take this and make cantilevers of our hangers here very simply. Okay. And again, it's finding the structure from the linked model, and I don't have to really worry about that too much in terms of being able to place these things. Okay. And if you are anything like me and you go ahead and actually accidentally get out of that, anytime you pick on a fabrication part, the Show Service button will appear, and you can go ahead and get that. That will get that back to there. So here you see a quick movie showing the same thing. Whereas I move this around, it'll automatically find the nearest structure for it to go to. Okay. And you can also drag these grips down, and it will find the hangers above it as well if you want to hang another hanger from the hanger above it. Okay, couple of other things that are that we have in Revit MEP outside of the fabrication stuff, which is the big ticket here in 2017. We now have apparent load calculation options that provides flexibility for how electrical load calculations are computed throughout the distribution system. So now we have two options to meet load tabulation preferences. We have the sum true load and reactive load, which is the default method whenever you upgrade the project, and we can also sum the apparent load as well. We also have temperature differential, the temperature difference parameter type as well, which is a new data type that we can apply, which can then be put into things like showing. Now that we have that as a parameter, we can now do things like automatically color fill our ductwork based upon that parameter, and so you get better analytical properties and analytical fallout essentially from that kind of stuff. All right, we also have pressure drops accounted at the tap fittings now, so we can go ahead and make sure that our pressure drop calculations are more accurate on our duct networks. And after we go ahead and calculate the pressure drop at the tap fittings, the pressure drop along the main and the branch will also be computed. Some stability improvements, some things that are just sort of day-to-day workability, workability kind of things. One is that now the mark value that's associated with ducts and other MEP elements are not populated when you place the elements across, and this is across multiple or almost all MEP categories. And what's nice about that is that if you're not going to get these warnings all the time that says, you duplicate mark values, which is one of those things that you just chase those down all the time whenever you see 560 warnings in your Revit model, and 300 of them are due to duplicate mark values. So what's nice now is that because that's not populated automatically, you're not going to get those warnings anymore. The pipe system volume is now computed as a background process, just like the color fills were before. And the ductwork display itself is now being regenerated, especially when you have a very heavy ductwork drawing, or ductwork view rather. The ductwork's only going to be regenerated in that 3D view, in a 2D view as well, for what's available, and will only show small elements as simplified lines, regardless of the detail level. So that's another performance improvement that Autodesk has made.